All right, good afternoon. It's 1 p.m., a little after, on July 22nd. We are officially calling this meeting of the AIB to order. As a reminder, this meeting is being recorded as public record, and that participation in a recorded meeting will be deemed as consent to be recorded, including statements both written and oral. Public records, including this recording, can be requested at any time in accordance with the Vermont Public Records Act. Thank you, welcome. So the first round of introductions, let's start with, I'm just trying to pull up everyone so I can see. So we'll start with members that are online. So the first person on my list is Laura.
Hello, Laura DePietro, Agency of Agriculture, Director of the Water Quality Division.
Thanks. Ryan?
Ryan Rebozo with the Vermont Center for Eco Studies.
Steve Schubart?
Steve Schubart, beef farmer.
Thanks, Steve. Wendy Sue?
Wendy Sue Harper, soil scientist.
Thanks. And I have one phone number on the line. Is that by chance Nate 4741?
This is Abby Pajak with DEC CACO program.
Hi, Abby. Okay, in the room, we'll just go around here.
Yeah, Steve Doynell, Director of the Farm Division.
Stephanie Smith, Deputy Director of the Farm Division.
I'm Morgan Griffith in the Farm Division as well.
Ann Breyer, Farm Division.
And it looks like we had one more member join us. Amanda, can you hear us? Just do a quick introduction.
Hi, Amanda St. Pierre, Dairy Farmer, Berkshire, Vermont, and Executive Director of Vermont Dairy Producer Alliance.
Thanks, Amanda. All right, others that are joining us online. Let's see, Brooke.
Hi, Brooke Decker, Agency of Agriculture, Pollinator Health Specialist.
Becky Langer-Curry.
Hi, Becky Langer, Bear Crop Science.
Hi, Becky. Emily May.
Emily May, Pollinator Conservation Biologist with Xerces Society for Invertebrate Conservation.
Thanks. Hi, Emily. Jerry.
Good afternoon, Jared Carpenter, Lake Champlain Committee. Good to see you all.
Thanks, Jared. Hi, thanks for joining us. Is there anybody on the call that I missed? All right, great. Okay, so we have a few things to talk about today. Oh, get Dylan on here. Dylan, do you want to just give a quick introduction?
Hello, my name is Dylan Gabbert. I'm representing CropLife America and RISE.
One more person joining. Hi, we're just doing quick introductions. If you're calling from phone number that ends in 2326, can you give a quick introduction?
Good afternoon. This is Nathan Norse, Nate Norse Consulting up in Montgomery, Vermont.
Great. Thanks for joining us, Nate. Zach, thanks for turning your camera on. I think I missed you. Go ahead, Zach.
Zach Shkowski, Agency of Agriculture, Farm Division.
Great. Okay. So, are our agenda today, we're going to start with something that's slightly different. So we're going to start with a seed report. I'll get into it after we do a little bit. And so Jill wasn't able to join us, and so she recorded her presentation. So we're going to be listening to our seed data from her, but she's not here to field questions, but we'll do the best we can if we have any questions, or we'll just take them as an action item to get back. So, and then we're going to talk about our Munich legislation that was passed just a few days before we had our last meeting in June. So we didn't talk about it in great detail, and then basically what that means for us as AIB. So what are our responsibilities and how are we going to tackle those responsibilities? So the last time we met was June 24th, and we sent out the meeting minutes, and I heard back, I think Wendy Sue, you said looks great. Does any other members have any comment about those meeting minutes, or are they acceptable as they were sent out? Okay. Another thing, Wendy Sue did send an article that was about basically like where are Munich's going in corn planting that is having the practice of prairie strips. So I did put it on our team site, so everyone should be able to get to that. I'll send a link to it when I send out the meeting minutes for today's meeting. But Wendy Sue, I didn't know if you wanted to just say why you thought it was interesting.
Okay, there's a little delay when I unmute. Well, I read it 6 weeks ago, so it's not completely in my head. But my memory's not as good as it used to be. But the thing that was interesting is that the prairie strips did not take up the neonics as I thought they might do from the soil. That was the interesting thing about it. So it's more complicated than maybe what we've heard, in the past. So anyways, that's why I thought it was a really interesting article. And I get agricultural ecosystem and the environment through Science Direct, and that was one of the papers they had posted. And, I can download things for so many days after I get sent that message. And then, so that's why I sent it to us. So.
Well, thank you. Yeah, we really appreciate it. So I put it on our team so we all have access to it. So Wendy Sue, thank you. We really appreciate it. And I think I found the same thing that was interesting. It was just like, well, it's not getting, that some of the idea of that prairie strip though is to plant pollinator friendly things in the prairie strip. So it's one positive thing is good to know that those pollinator friendly plants in the prairie strip is not sucking up the neonics, but they're just passing through.
I didn't get to see that article.
Yeah,
I apologize.
I can send it to you. It's okay. Let's be on the list.
The strip is adjacent to the field, not through the field, right? Like it's a buffer around an agricultural field.
I think it was through. We can look at it. I don't know. I think it's through it. Yeah, when you see it. But also just to put it out there for other members, if you have things you think are relevant to things that we're talking about, please send them along, and I'm happy to put them on the team site so that everyone can see and read and find what's interesting as well. So thank you, Wendy Sue, and then extending the offer to other members to keep them coming. All right, so without further ado, I'm going to attempt to do Jill's seed report. Unless, Steve, do we have any other Agency of Ag update? Okay. All right. So I tested this. So if people in the chat, just give me a thumbs up if you can hear it when I start it. Okay. I can start. It goes.
Good afternoon to the AIB. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Jill Goff. I'm with the Vermont Agency of Agriculture's Feed, Seed, and Fertilizer Program. And today I'm presenting a summary on the 2023 seed report. Let's begin with an overview. There was a sizable uptick in reporting compliance from registered seed distributors this year. This 2023 cycle had 116 registered seed distributors, just one less than last year's 117, with 70 seed distributors filing all required reports. This compares to last year where we had 17. One distributor filed an incomplete report this year, whereas 8 filed incomplete reports last year. We had 6 seed distributors that were filing under a parent entity. And this year we had 39 seed distributors who failed to file any of the GE treated and untreated seed reporting. This compares to last year where we had 92 failing to file any of the GE treated and untreated seed reporting. Here's a quick graphic that just shows the amount of treated and untreated seed across all seed categories. This year, in 2023, a total of 2,114 tons of treated seed was reported in all categories save for hemp, and a total of 1,267 tons of untreated seed was sold across all categories. The top 5 seed categories for this reporting year were corn, soybean, turf, cereal grain, and legume forage and pasture. Whereas last year, for the 2022 reporting season, it was corn, soybean, legume forage and pasture, cereal grains, and cover crops. These top 5 seed categories for 2022 and 2023 are here just displayed with a quick visual representation, with the orange being the volume of treated seed and the blue being the volume of untreated seed. And taking into account all seeds sold, not just those top 5 seed categories, we had 37% untreated and 63% treated seed sold for the year 2023, whereas in 2022 we had 22% untreated and 78% treated. We're taking a look at single versus multiple treatment types applied to seed, just to see how distributors are selling packages or single types of seed treatments. When I say a single treatment might be applied, I would give an example of a fungicide. But even though that fungicide might be a single treatment type, it might have multiple active ingredients, such as thiram and metalaxyl in a combination. On the right-hand side, it looks like we have about 36% of the seed reported as treated for which we have no treatment information. And we have 50% reporting that they had a single treatment type applied, and 14% for which there was multiple treatments applied. My guess is it's probably largely a multiple treatment applied, but again, having no information provided, that's simply a guess. Last year, we had a 1% of seed reported as treated as a single treatment applied, and we had 99% as multiple treatments applied. I'd like to focus our attention on the single treatment applied by seed treatment type. So we had 50% in that single treatment seed category this past year. And in 2022, we had just 1% reporting a single treatment applied. So that while the data is a little off in terms of a side-by-side comparison, you can see that there is a mirror of the amount of fungicide reported as applied as a single treatment and the amount of biological seed treatments applied. As our reporting compliance and the information gathered becomes more uniform, it'll enable us to do a better side-by-side picture of what the top single treatments are applied. This is the treatment in tons reported. On the right-hand side, we have 2023's data. So we have fungicide-treated seed coming in as 1,002 tons, insecticide-treated seed as 1,257 tons, nematicide-treated seed as 813 tons, and then miscellaneous seed treatments applied were 134 tons. So that big focus here is the insecticide was 39% of all seed treatments applied. The fungicide followed at 31% of all seed treatments applied, and then nematicide at 26% of all seed treatments applied. And the remainder was just miscellaneous seed treatments. I left last year's in, but again, because there was a small number comparatively of seed reports received last year, I think we'll be able to look clearly as we move forward and reporting compliance continues to have a better picture of which categories farmers are seeking to have applied. Here we're looking at a side-by-side comparison of the 2022 data on reported active ingredients and the 2023 data estimating pounds of active ingredient. A total of 2,114 tons of seed was reported as being treated, and there was an estimate of 7,979 pounds of active insecticide chemical agents. Of these 7,979 pounds of applied insecticide, 7,093 pounds, or 89% of these estimated active ingredients were reported as being a neonicotinoid, and 885 pounds of the estimated active ingredients, or 11%, were reported as being a non-neonicotinoid. These were noted as being the anthranilic diamide family. As I indicated on the previous slide, there was an uptick in reporting compliance and an increase in available data. And this led to an effort to utilize the reported data to create an estimate of pounds of applied fungicide, insecticide, and nematicide seed treatments by their individual chemical agents. Most treated seed was reported to have multiple treatment types applied and multiple active ingredients utilized in those treatment types. This table represents the estimated amount in pounds of the reported insecticide seed treatment. These estimates were calculated by using a representative product label to obtain the upper and lower rate for the seed crop category reported, and applying those rates to the pounds of seed reported, and then obtaining an average. This is meant only as a rough estimate of the total pounds of active ingredients applied to the reported seed sold in Vermont for 2023. Here we can see that the top seed insecticide treatment applied was clothianidin, followed by thiamethoxam, then chlorantraniliprole, and imidacloprid. Imidacloprid. Too much time in the veterinary world. Here's a look at the rough estimate on the fungicide active ingredients. And this is in an increasing order from left to right here, with pyraclostrobin being the top active ingredient applied, and the least would be penfluvan at 0.12 pounds total reported, and pyraclostrobin at 2,363 pounds applied. Here's a peek at the nematicide in pounds applied. The Bacillus firmus I had at 391 pounds total applied in the state, and abamectin at 84 pounds total applied in the state. This year, a total of 1,116 tons of genetically engineered seed was reported in the corn, soybean, and legume forage and pasture crop categories. This is where it places on the graph, beginning from when we first started measuring genetically engineered seed sold in the state of Vermont till this 2023 reporting cycle. Here we have a look at the 3-year comparison in crop categories of reported GE tonnage. The orange is 2021, the blue is 2022 data, and the green is 2023 data. These are the tonnage numbers for that GE reported in the 3-year comparison. This year's genetically engineered reported seed would be 953 tons of genetically engineered corn, almost 1 ton of genetically engineered legume forage and pasture, and about 162 genetically engineered soybean. So before we go forward, I wanted to take a look back at some of the changes that we made in the 2023 reporting season. So the genetically engineered seed report and the treated and untreated seed report required from all our registered seed distributors were linked this year into one form, and we made that form available in either an Excel version or a PDF version. There was also a change in the reporting forms where we asked where the seed was purchased from. This was an attempt by the agency to be able to remove redundant volumes prior to data analysis. We also attempted to clarify the amount and type of treatments applied. Report forms now requested active ingredient and the rate at which it was applied. And then one final note, there was a separation in previous forms as to where in the system the seed was sold, whether it was sold to another dealer or whether it was sold to a farmer. This was removed from the reporting form. Looking ahead, the goal for the seed program is to continue to actively engage with our seed distributors, providing reminders of reporting obligations and responding to their questions and helping them fill out required forms. We're looking to also refine that linked reporting form to improve its clarity and ease of use. We've had a number of distributors give us positive and negative feedback, and we're taking that into account and rolling it out for a new year. And this year, we're also going to move to use the EPA number and the rate of application rather than the brand and active ingredient and the active of application rate for that treatment reporting. So the EPA number and rate will be a little bit simpler than to look at all the various brand names that have been reported in previous years.
Great. She didn't do a sign off, but good job, Jill. I know Jill's not here, but we can attempt to answer. Does anybody have a question about that? And that will be up on the website and on our AIB SharePoint to access. But does anybody have any questions now?
Morgan?
Yes.
Stephanie here in the room. I wanted that report, and that data is available on the agency's website.
Oh, great.
It's I'm going to try to put a link in the chat.
Great. Okay. So next up is just one more time, we're going to talk to you about the neonic prohibition. So I'm going to start us off. Oh, I can get rid of this. One. Okay, better. Great. Okay, so to date, we've been calling this H706, but since it has passed, it is now Act 182, called an act relating to banning the use of neonicotinoid pesticides. So the idea is just to quickly go over exactly what is in it, how it passed as its final version, because we've been talking about it a lot. We have been talking about previous versions, so this is what is in the books. So when we last talked about it, we knew it had passed the House and Senate. It was vetoed by the governor near the end of May, and then just a couple days before we met in June, that veto was overridden. So the main sections that are in Act 182, this is the one that we were kind of the responsible for providing a recommendation for, and so this is about relevant treated seeds, so seeds treated with neonics. So it is worded as selling, offering for sale or distribution, distributing or using soybean or cereal grain seeds treated with neonics is prohibited. Neonics, the active ingredients listed here are the ones that are defined as neonics in Vermont statute. So the ones that we see are the last three there. Those are the ones that we've been commonly talking about. Some of these we don't have anything registered in Vermont, some we do, but because of previous legislation, anything that contains any one of these active ingredients is a restricted use pesticide in the state of Vermont. The cereal grain crop groups, so I tried to list here some of the plants that are included in that crop group. And so corn, right? So that's the one we talked about the most. That's the one that has the most significance in Vermont. And but other things are in that crop group. So seeds treated with neonics that are oats or wild rice or amaranth or barley, all of those would also be prohibited. This section, this prohibition takes effect January 1st, 2029. However, that prohibition can be suspended with the issuance of an exemption order from Secretary of Agriculture, but only when the following conditions are met. So the grower has to complete an integrated pest management IPM training that is either provided by the Agency of Ag or by an approved third party. The grower has to complete a pest risk assessment and submit that to the Agency of Ag. And that the seeds that are allowed to be used under the exemption order can only be planted on the properties that are identified on that pest risk assessment. And the grower has to keep current records of the pest management assessment report, including when the treated seeds are planted. These are the things that are spelled out in the Act as to what an exemption order, what has to happen for an exemption order to be issued. So the exemptions for the treated seeds can be valid for up to 1 year, so it can't be over a year. They specify the type of neonic treated seed that can be used or sold. It has to have the date on it that the exemption takes effect and the duration of the exemption. An exemption order, like a permit, say, so the exemption order can have additional restrictions on there to restrict how those neonic treated seeds can be used in order to minimize the harm to pollinators, birds, or other ecosystems or public health. And when Agency of Ag issues an exemption order, they have to send it then to the Senate and House Ag committees. And the General Assembly will post it on the website. So this is all written in the act. Agency of Ag can rescind, can take back that exemption order, but it's a little bit tricky because obviously you can't take it back if they already planted the treated seeds. Stop me at any time if you want to say like, whoa, 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 hold up. So the next section is about, this is what's kind of new to what we haven't looked into this yet. So this is the general neonic pesticide, right? Prohibitions. So the following uses of neonic pesticides are prohibited. First one, outdoor application to any crop during bloom. This is already in our rule for control of pesticides. So this isn't necessarily new. It's just putting it in a different place. In addition to the rule. Number two, outdoor application to soybeans and any cereal grain crop group. So all of those plants that I listed in that cereal crop group a few slides ago and soybeans, so basically says you can't apply neonics in the field either. So you can't do in furrow, you can't do over the top, but no neonics. The third one here is outdoor application to crops in leafy vegetables, brassica, bulb vegetables, herbs and spices, and stalk, stem, leaf, petiole vegetable crop groups that are harvested after bloom. So I put a few, this is definitely not all of the plants that are listed in those crop groups. But the key thing here is that their application of neonics are prohibited if these plants are harvested after bloom. So if you look at these plants, like garlic and onions and your cauliflower and your broccoli, so you harvest those before it bolt, like you don't want it to bolt in flower, right? So you're harvesting those before bloom. So, and if you guys see something on there that definitely is like people are growing in Vermont and we need to reach out to somebody. So we've done a little bit of digging already. So we talked to UVM Extension for vegetable growers, kind of trying to get an idea of how this would affect people. And we don't have a big contingency that this would affect because of that harvested after bloom condition. Saffron was one that we were also worried about because that one definitely is harvested during bloom. So saffron is like the crocus flower. So it's like the stem, what is that called? Stamen of the crocus flower. So, and I know that we do have some Vermont saffron growers. And so we reached out to Margaret Skinner with UVM Entomology because she was like the owner of the saffron listserv. And so she just got back to me today and she kind of did a quick survey. There's a potential of 900 people on this saffron listserv, but I think that's obviously outside of Vermont. It's the kind of like almost a nationwide saffron. So she got 36 responses, so a 4% response rate. But she said 2 people from outside Vermont said that they use an herbicide for their saffron production. 5 growers, all in Vermont, said they use a fungicide. But she says that sometimes they do have a fungicide that's biologically based. So she was thinking that may be what they use. And 0 of the 36 responses reported that they use any insecticides. So no one was reporting that they use neonics, obviously, because they are not using any insecticides. So preliminary thoughts is this might not be a big impact for saffron growers in Vermont. So that third prohibition, it sounds scary at first, but it might not have a huge impact. And so the fourth prohibition of the general neonic pesticide is significant, and so it is listed in the Act as it's prohibited for any application to ornamental plants. So we tried to set up a meeting with the Ornamental and Landscape Association.
Nursery and Landscape Association, VNLA.
Thank you.
With a diverse membership of individuals that participate in either, operating a nursery and or a landscape type business, so that they have a very diverse membership.
Yeah, and so we ended up just talking to one nursery owner in Vermont about the significance of this, and it would impact their production process right now. Even, they're using IPM, but they have neonics in their toolbox currently. So this prohibition for neonic pesticide use in general, it takes effect July 1st, 2025. So that prohibition also can be suspended with issuance of an exemption order by the Secretary of Ag. And that is if the Secretary determines that there's a valid environmental or agricultural emergency, that neonics would be effective in addressing the emergency, and that there is not an alternative. So there's not a less harmful pesticide or any other pest management practice that would be effective in addressing that emergency. Similar to the treated seed exemptions, they are up to 1 year. They specify the neonic pesticide uses and crops, the date it takes effect, and the duration of the exemption, and also that geographic scope of where they can be used. It also has to include an evaluation determining that that emergency exists. And then, like a permit and like the other exemption orders, the exemption order can have additional restrictions for the use of those neonics, I should say neonic pesticides, not treated seeds, I apologize, to minimize harm to pollinators, birds, and ecosystem. If the Agency of Ag issues an exemption, they have to send it to the Senate and the House Ag committees, and they can rescind the exemption order, but no sooner than 15 days after they issue. So Section 5 of the Act is around the registration of neonic pesticides. So the wording in the Act is, unless the use or sale of a neonic pesticide is otherwise prohibited, Agency of Ag registers neonic products approved for outdoor use as a state restricted use product. So this is an amendment. It basically just that first part of that sentence. So unless the use or sale of a neonic pesticide is otherwise prohibited is the addition to what's already in statute. So right now we already register things with neonics as a Class A restricted use product. There is a list of exemptions, most notably includes pet collars, pet products. A lot of those have neonics in them, and those are still for homeowner use or Class C products. So that second bullet, basically what was also listed in the list of things that could stay classified as non-restricted use, it did say treated seed in there. So treated seed was removed from that list. However, we learned when we were talking about this that the treated seed itself is not a pesticide, right? So we don't register currently treated seeds. We register the products that go on the treated seeds. And so that will continue to happen. And what the change here means, so that unless the use or sale of neonic pesticide is otherwise prohibited, which means that we are going to review products before registration to understand their uses and to understand if those uses are prohibited by this Act. So Section 6. So this is the part where it puts the responsibility on the Agency of Ag to adopt by rule best management practices in Vermont for the use of, first two bullets here are ones we know, right? Neonic treated seeds. So now it's neonic treated seeds when they're used prior to when they are prohibited. The date in the act says 2031, but it should be 2029 because that's when that prohibition takes effect. Or the use of the neonic treated seeds when there's an exemption order in place. So that we've already done. So AIB, we've already consulted with Agency of Ag on BMPs for neonic treated seeds. So really now what should ping in our heads is the second two bullets. And so Agency of Ag has to adopt by rule best management practices for neonic pesticides when they're used under an exemption order. So when that emergency exists, that environmental or agricultural emergency exists, and BMPs for agricultural use of neonic pesticides after the prohibition is in effect, that their use is not otherwise prohibited. So basically any ag use of neonic pesticides should be addressed in the best management practices that are adopted by rule. And that's where, and we are consulting with the Agency of Ag for those best management practices. Yes, go ahead.
Consulting with Agricultural Innovation.
Sorry, I'm saying we as AIB. So AIB is consulting with Agency of Ag. Yep, sorry, it's confusing.
Okay.
So in developing the rules, this we've seen before. These are the 7 required topics that we went through over the last year and a half. So what they did in the act is, so they are just including the general neonic pesticides into each of these required topics. And I'm going to go into this a little bit more when we talk about our work plan, but so it's the same ones that we've seen about scouting and monitoring, economic impact, toxicity to human and environment, and kind of that criteria for system of approval. So where we interpreted that as AIB, where we look at other things, right? So we're going to see what other states are doing or have done, and kind of what's out there already for best management practices. So for this rulemaking, the timing in the act is the same as it was when it was just for neonic treated seeds. So this was the timetable that we worked on for the last year and a half. It's still the time that's in the act. So it's hard for us to say a time for us, but we can talk about it more when I pull up the work plan. So the Agency of Agriculture did submit on March 1st a copy of proposed rules for best management practices for neonic treated seeds. That was, we did see that as well as AIB. I believe it's on our SharePoint and it's available because it was shared during the meeting. This we talked about, so they did add section 8 of the act is about this contingency repeal. So the prohibition of use and sale of neonic treated seeds shall be repealed if that prohibition on the use of neonic treated seeds in New York is repealed. So basically we talked about that comparison between New York and Vermont. And so this just ties us even closer. So if New York gets rid of it, then ours is repealed as well. And then the second bullet is just the same, just for that general neonic pesticide use prohibitions. Effective dates, just again for you. So the general neonic pesticides on certain crops, that prohibition takes effect July 1st, 2025, provided that New York still has it. And the prohibition of use and sale of neonic treated seeds takes effect January 1, 2029, provided that New York still has this also. So the next thing that we're going to talk about is how, like, right, what is AIB responsible for? How are we going to tackle it? But does anyone have anything they want me to go back to or go back over? Yep, go ahead, Becky.
So under the exemption for the treated seed, you mentioned that the grower would need to take IPM training offered either by the state or a third party group. One, I wondered if the state already gives that sort of IPM training, and two, if third party offered it, does it need to be approved by the state?
Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, so Becky, yeah, so currently there is some general IPM training, for in general crops or a particular crop, but this would have to be specific for the use of the treated seed. Since that's the subject of this provision. As far as a third party providing, it would have to have some kind of approval. The thing to keep in mind is that this provision mirrors the almost identical provision in New York, the New York law. And in conversations with folks over in New York, Cornell is already working on something like this. And I've had conversations with UVM, and they're communicating. So whatever gets developed, through Cornell or UVM, and that's the way this thing would develop. It'd be a IPM training course, either, adopted from the one that New York develops or, modeled on it or vice versa. But the UVM folks and the Cornell folks are already talking, and we're already talking with our counterparts in New York.
Okay, thanks.
Does anybody else have any questions from that run through? All right, so the next thing that I was going to pull up is so as AIB, what do we have to do, right? So I kind of walked through that a little bit. So it's we have to provide a recommendation to the Agency of Agriculture for rules, BMPs, for the use of neonic treated seeds. So that we have, but also neonic pesticides when they're used under an exemption order, or the neonics that are used in agriculture that are not prohibited. And then in developing the rules, we shall address our 7 required topics. So of course, you guys know me, I pulled out our old trustee work plan. So this is how we organize ourselves for the last year and a half, of how we decided who we listened to and what information we didn't have yet. So the overall goal is to make a recommendation for drafting a rule for the use of neonic treated seeds and neonic pesticides in Vermont. So then there's these 7 required topics. So the overall goal, so this is in yellow, so we don't have a specific date in the act because it already passed. So the date that we're tentatively working off of is, okay, well, we know the first prohibition is going to take effect July 1st, 2025. That's when we can't use neonics on ornamentals, and then we can't use on corn or cereal grains or soybeans, and we can't use on those plants, those crops that are harvested after bloom. So rulemaking process is not speedy process, but also we wanted to be able for the AIB to do due diligence and hear enough information. So we're going to tentatively, we're trying for, okay, if the AIB can give a recommendation by fall, so we just put November 1st, then that can help inform the Agency of Ag to then hopefully start the rulemaking process and justify the rules that have put forth for all of those BMPs put together for those 4 things. So that's what I'm organizing our meetings towards, is this like November 1st timeline. So we got to get cracking. So the first topic A is the threshold levels for pest pressure required before you use either neonic treated seeds or neonic pesticides. We often, the way that we looked at it, this past year and a half, we lumped A and E together. So E, I can make this bigger, I'm sorry. E is the monitoring, so the surveillance and monitoring techniques. Oh, go ahead, Wendy Sue.
I don't know if other people are seeing a black screen with a G. It looks like a person in it instead of anything that has A, B, C on it. So I just thought I should tell you that.
I am sharing an Excel sheet. Can other people see that?
I see the Excel sheet.
Well, bummer. I'm sorry, Wendy Sue. I don't know.
That's okay.
Sorry, I don't know how to help that. So A and E, so we've started this, our idea, and I'm asking for feedback from members. So basically it's like about scouting and monitoring in the process of IPM, when is the neonic pesticide needed. So we've started conversations with UVM Extension, in particular the vegetable specific group that targets vegetable growers for UVM Extension. And we had a meeting with them this past week. And they mentioned that basically kind of like the Bible for vegetable growers, vegetable producers in Vermont is the New England Vegetable Management Guide, which is put on by many states in New England. And so our hope is to review this guide and ask for any, basically to put in there what this law means for Vermont growers. So then they're going to their management guide, they can see the requirements that are needed in this regulation. So they'll understand when they can use a neonic pesticide. So if the AIB wants to hear more about this, but it's basically, we've heard about IPM. We kind of know the principles of IPM. And maybe we can walk through after Agency of Ag reviews this and proposes kind of edits, and we can review that with the AIB so that you guys understand kind of how we're tackling this topic. But does anybody have anything else that they are feeling like is in a gap of what we've heard? Are ready for anything more that they want to know about use of IPM or use of neonics? Okay. So required topic B is the availability of non-treated article seeds and non-neonic treated article seeds. I am saying that is complete. We have heard about that. We don't need to talk about it anymore. C, required topic C, determine economic impact from crop loss as compared to crop yield when neonic treated article seeds or neonic pesticides are used. We heard just a little bit from Jill now about what the proportion of treated seeds are in Vermont right now in all the categories. And so we have heard that. We do have only one more year of neonic data. So last year we presented about the usage that gets reported to the Agency of Agriculture, and then we can tease out the neonics. So we did that through 2021 usage that was reported. We do have 2022 usage in there, so I can update that. That does have the caveat, it doesn't include treated seeds. It also is only commercial and non-commercial growers. or certified applicators. So we're missing the private applicator reporting. So the usage data that we have will not capture the kind of larger and smaller vegetable producers or fruit producers in Vermont because they are likely private applicators. But any other topics, any other people you want me to look into to get to hear about economics of related to this ban?
Do you want us to reach out to VNLA again, Vermont Nursery and Landscape?
Oh yeah,
Association,
we
and
should.
see if there's someone who could speak to an economic impact and production from an ornamental standpoint. Becky's hand went up and Laura's hand went up. I guess we'll start with Becky. Sorry, just you're typing. I'm looking at the screen.
That's fine. I was just going to share. It's a little bit older information, but they did some case studies which may highlight some places in the Northeast. But growingmatters.org has quite a bit of economic information posted. Again, not sure if they had Northeast case studies, but it might be worth checking.
Thank you.
Thanks, Becky.
Laura.
Maybe irrelevant, but it's just one thing that struck me, and again, the data that's reported for the report that Jill did, it's not the total universe, but it did seem like on year to year, it was about 50-50 with soybean people who are using treated seed versus not. And I just don't know if there's some analysis in there to look at yields and productivity between the users that do and the users that don't within Vermont.
Should be able to figure that out. They all get treated. They're
treated in state.
Yeah, treated in state.
Yeah.
Or they're treated after their purchase. So.
Yeah.
Anything else? Any brainstorm? Also, if you think of something after the fact, just let me know. Shoot me an email. So I'm trying to book all of our meetings now through October. So even if you find a study or something so that I can reach out to the author, just send it over and I can see what we can do. The next required topic is about the toxicities. So we previously did kind of through the lens of treated seeds only. So our member, Sarah Owen, who wasn't available to join us today, and then myself reviewed the EPA risk assessments for kind of those top 3 neonics. And we made presentations to the AIB. So the health one Sarah talked about in March of 2023, and then ecological risk assessment I talked about in April of 2023. So we did focus mainly on treated seeds, but in particular for the ecological one, we did talk about everything that the risk assessment talked about for environmental risks. So I was leaning towards, unless someone wants to know more about the environmental risk or the human health risk of these active ingredients, I was thinking that we can call this required topic complete. But if someone wants to know more or look at it from a different perspective, let me know.
It's
Yeah.
sorry. I was just thinking because neonics are a systemic, right?
Yeah.
And so the use of like the of it versus a foliar application in terms of like a comparison of the toxicity across pesticides. Does that make sense? If you had to use an alternative product, and you had to do it via a different application method rather than using it as a systemic, which was potentially a different kind of application method, is that something that I don't know?
Write it down. I'm brainstorming. I get it.
Yeah.
So it's like
it's like, okay, if I have to use a foliar spray and I'm a agricultural worker, I got to don any number of PPE and there's a risk to my health potentially. I'm just making a scenario up to explain the point versus maybe if it's systemic, it could potentially be less toxic to the worker because of the application method.
You don't really get drift with a seed treatment.
With a seed treatment, yeah.
I guess it does the previous risk assessment, especially the environmental risk assessment, cover non-seed transfer in the environment.
We can go back. I believe we did. We summarized.
But even into the alternatives,
the risk assessment.
Let's say it's not a neonic.
But right, I didn't have other alternatives. I don't have other chemistries.
Yeah, other chemistry. Yeah, that's what I was thinking too.
Okay. E goes along with A for scouting, monitoring, threshold levels. So we're again. F is that outline ways to reduce pest harborage from conservation tillage practices. This is very specific to treated seeds. Does it say treated seeds? Say F. Ways to reduce pest harborage. I guess we could look at it from neonics in general also. I was marking it as complete, but maybe that was wishful thinking. What we learned is that conservation tillage helped to reduce. So it was, the way this was written was the opposite of what we learned. Correct me if I'm wrong, anybody who remembers. So what we learned was that conservation tillage helped reduce pest pressure. So instead of ways to reduce pest harborage from conservation tillage actually helps reduce. That's what we heard, but yeah.
Well, conservation tillage though can increase the risk.
Not sure we heard that. We did?
No, that was just the whole point. The cover crop and tilling cover crop in.
But that creates, right, so tilling your cover crop in creates more organic matter, which makes the pest, right, yeah, correct. Yeah, we're saying the same thing, yeah. But I guess we could hear about it in other things other than, maybe I can pull out a little question mark. Maybe we can in other ag systems besides corn, right? So that's corn, soy. To make sure that it's the same
outcome.
Yeah,
as corn. Yeah.
I'm not going to do that in front of everyone, whether it's e-factory. That's it.
Have the benefit of just making messy handwriting.
Oh yeah, right. Whether it's me or an it. Okay. Great. And the last one is that establish criteria for system of approval of neonic treated seeds or neonic pesticides. So this we heard from Jean Harrington in the past, who gave us a great update of what other states had for pending and or past legislation. So he's coming right now. He's available for our October meeting. So we are quickly booking ourselves all the way out. So this is our hope. And so in August, we have we have farming practices that support pollinators. We have Laura Johnson, the pollinator extension specialist from UVM, coming to talk. So that is basically BMPs that are already out there. So that's an example of locally what is being communicated and educated for our local producers. And so Laura's coming to talk about that. Also, Heather Darby is coming to give us an update on her neonic research for this growing season in August. And so just to mix things up, I had booked this Steve Lee, who is an extension professor from Auburn University, and he specializes in the use of drones in agriculture, drones to apply pesticides in agriculture. So this is kind of just a teaser for the potential next topic for AIB. But I felt badly canceling him. I had booked him before we knew that the 706 was going to pass again. And so I'm going to keep him as kind of a break from neonics for us. So we're going to learn about drones and how they can be used in agriculture to reduce overall pesticide usage and exposure. So he's going to speak with us in August as well. But so another activity that we have worked on that we're going to talk about now that kind of gets at this required topic for what's already out there, right? Like what other systems are already out there, and that is what other BMPs for general neonic use are out there. So I'm going to pull up one more. So we've seen a list of resources for treated seed best management practices already. So this should be familiar to you. So when we were thinking about this in the past, we said, okay, well, you know, who's already published best management practices for use of neonic treated seeds? And so we had the American Seed Trade Association, we had Health Canada, we had the Honeybee Health Coalition, Minnesota, and then the best management practices for farmers using seeds treated with neonics, that's from Connecticut, basically Connecticut Agency of Ag, and then the Corn Dust Research Consortium. So if you remember, we kind of pulled all of those best management practices together and we lumped them into themes, and that's where we could pull where some best management practices could come from, right? In reducing dust and things about the perimeter of the field and communication between people who have hives on adjacent properties. And so we did a similar thing for general neonic best management practices. So, and I will share this, I'll put this, it will be on our website. And so we pulled together what we could find of what was already out there and published of neonic best management practices. So Minnesota Department of Agriculture has is a great resource for these best management practices. So they had specific ones for water quality, but also for home and residential use, and then soil and foliar, so different application modes. We went golf courses. So turf was removed from the Vermont law that passed. And so this is not totally applicable. Also, golf courses are not considered agriculture. So for that best management practice, that's in our rule for ag use of neonics that aren't prohibited. Doesn't necessarily include applications on golf courses, but the best management practices kind of all get together. You know, it's all kind of a similar themes. And so we decided to keep that in and look at it and pull from it as well. We also have landscape professionals, turf and ornamental best management practices. Honeybee Coalition has it for field corn as well. So they have not just treated seeds, but more uses of neonics. So we added it to this list as well. We have NC State, Pollinator Partnership. What else? Cornell had many best management practices for just to reduce pesticide risk to bees in different crops. So we looked at all of those. Purdue also had one for pollinator protection for home and lawns. So with all of this, I'm going to pass it over to Zach, and he's going to explain kind of what we learned from looking at these previously published. Yeah, go ahead, Pam.
Turf grown for sale is agricultural, but golf courses are not.
Right.
I think so.
So it does make sense to develop that.
Yeah, so still, yep.
Hey everybody. So as Morgan kind of just explained, we went through each of those documents that described different BMPs, and a lot of them, I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. Hopefully this is the best practices that you're seeing. So what we did is, Morgan and I together, we kind of, reviewed all these documents and pulled out best practices. And, as Morgan alluded to, a lot of them kind of say the same things. So you have a best practice, and then, all the documents that, refer to either the same or similar practice, and then we categorize them by the BMP type. More often than not, most of them are general IPM kind of practices, but some of them are a little more specific for pollinator protection, for example, and then likewise some of them are kind of more targeted towards the off-target movement of neonicotinoid pesticides, or just pesticides in general. And so all of those are in this document, but the idea that we're hoping to do is to provide you all with a survey. So all of those have been, put onto a Microsoft Forms form to use as a survey to members. So, each question is going to list like a best management practice, and then members will have the opportunity to rank these, one being high priority BMP and 5 being the lowest priority, and kind of just look over all of these BMPs, and then you can just assign a number to those, and then lastly we have kind of a catch-all at the end, just to gauge whether any members have any other best management practice ideas that were not included, and that they would like to include. Just to reiterate, these are largely all they're kind of generalized practices. Some are a little more specific, but they are kind of just overarching themes, and some of them do kind of fall into one hat or the other. But that is the idea that we're gonna try to go forward with. So then, once we get information back from members, we can start, differentiating these and kind of honing down the process into potential draft rules. So that is the idea.
Go ahead, Steve.
How will this be pushed out to the members?
So it will be shared with members through email. So there'll be a link in an email. Yep. So we were hoping to send it. We'll send it out this week, and we're hoping basically just to get your feedback before the next meeting. So we'll send out some reminder emails as well. But we're not asking for an extremely quick turnaround, but so think about it, and because we really value member input on this, and we thank you, and we'll kind of compile what everyone's thinking, and it'll be a way of prioritizing things. Zach, I didn't know if you wanted to give a really brief overview. All I said was that the rulemaking process was long. So I don't know if you wanted to just, I know I'm putting you on the spot, but give like a really brief, like, tick mark of kind of what the Agency of Ag is looking at for these goals.
Yeah, I can give a brief overview, yeah, off the top of my head. So I believe for this case, and I don't think it's going to be changed, but we have to, because it's required by specifically under Title VI, under whatever chapter, I can't think of off the top of my head, but we have to, we have to draft the rules, and then we have to submit those to the committees, agriculture committees, both the Senate and the House. I think that's it. There might be other committees. I don't fully remember. So that's like kind of like step 0 for these. We did it with the neonicotinoid treated article seeds, BMPs in March, but I would imagine we have to redo this all together again. So step 0, submit those draft rules to the relevant committees, and then afterwards, I would imagine they might, provide some feedback. We need to, decipher, incorporate feedback, I would imagine, if necessary, and then next step would be submitting the draft rules to the Interagency Committee on Administrative Rules. And they kind of are tasked with looking at how an agency can maximize public input in the rulemaking process. And so we'll submit the draft rules to that committee, who will then hold a hearing, discuss, how we can maximize public input on this rulemaking process, as well as how the rule might affect other agencies. Afterwards, we get that, everything in shape with our filing forms, because it's in addition to the draft rules, you have to fill out filing forms that are, this is all required under the Vermont Administrative Procedure Act. And, we get the go-ahead from ICAR, which is that interagency committee. We submit to the Secretary of State. We submit a proposed draft rule, and then subsequently opens the public comment period. There's some timelines involved in that. That's, I think at the very minimum, that can be a month or 2. I would imagine those are going to be open for public comment for a little more than that, maybe. and we will most likely hold at least one hearing, I would imagine, during that time. After the public comment period ends, then we will incorporate any received public comments regarding the draft rules, possibly make edits to the draft rule, and then resubmit a final proposed rule. And then subsequently is we need to meet with the legislative committee on administrative rules, which is another thing, and that should only take one time, but sometimes it takes a couple meetings with them. And then, I think once they give their blessing, we are able to submit an adopted rule. The Administrative Procedure Act also prescribes that the rules, the whole process in totality should only take 8 months. But there are provisions, with consent from the legislature that this process can be extended. So we're looking at 8 months, less than 8 months, ideally, but you never know. Things can get dicey. And that's my off the top of my head APA review.
That was pretty good. Thank you, Jen.
I have a flow chart from the Secretary of State's website that I'll put in the chat, and it just reaffirms what Zach said.
Right. Great. Thanks.
But it's
Didn't have enough.
graphic.
Yeah, it tells you everything you need.
Passed with flying colors, Zach. Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions or comments?
Does anybody have any questions or comments? So we will send out that survey for best management practices, and that's kind of our first attempt. I think it falls under that required topic G as far as, let's see what's already out there. What ones should we incorporate? But please speak up if we have any other ideas of things that we want to hear, ways that we want to approach our responsibilities. So that's, I know we're a little short, but we are pretty full for the August meeting. So we will probably not end early in August. But so before that, I do want to open it for public comment. So does anybody, oh, sure. First, Laura, go ahead.
I guess I'm just curious. Thank you for going through everything. It's great to hear it again. If you write these rules and then New York repeals, what happens to the rules?
A good question for General Counsel.
Great question.
Okay.
Thank you.
It just seems you should probably build some repeal into them, right? So that it's just straight up in there, if that's a possibility. If it makes sense. I mean, you all, AIB, discuss it, but it seems like if you don't have a law to back it up, it'll be harder to support a rule and enforce it.
Yeah, I mean, I would double check with General Counsel, but if the enabling legislation doesn't exist, then the rule would be, not effective.
Yeah,
very
and I'm
good
sure you
point.
have to file something with the Secretary of State to withdraw it, but just things to check into and understand, because you could do all this work and then nothing can happen. So
Sorry, I'm just trying to write that so we make sure that we. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, any public comment? Any members of the public that joined us today? Cool. Well, I think that we can give you back some time. Oh, nope, Steve's got his hand up.
You can go over the dates for the next several meetings.
Yeah, so I can pull that up again. So the dates of the next couple meetings are. So we have August 26th, September 23rd, and October 28th. I think those are set in stone. After that, our schedule gets wonky, as you can see right now. If I'm just going by the fourth Monday of the month in November and December, we start screwing with holiday schedules. So we'll probably modify those dates. Yeah.
Follow up later.
Okay. Wendy Sue, go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. I have that we move the 25th to the 18th for some reason of November. Is that incorrect?
That may have been for 2023.
Okay.
But I don't think we went through that exercise yet for 2024. We could try and do it right now, but I was.
We have more members.
Yeah, I was thinking let's try and or maybe I'll do a doodle poll, like a poll for members to say during that time, that kind of November, December. But we have done it where we truncate those into one meeting. But yeah, so I'll do that when. So how about that? I will do a poll to members to find out. I'll give a couple available afternoons for that kind of combined holiday time-ish one. But thanks for bringing that up. That's a good one. Okay. I think if there's nothing else, I think we can give you guys your afternoon back. Thank you very much for participating, and keep a lookout for that BMP survey in your email. Thanks all.
Thank you.
Nice job, Morgan. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
But you didn't want to talk today.